Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Scott Stedman podcast. I hope you are having a great weekend. Uh, Joining me today is Micah Current. Micah, what's going on, my friends? It seems like there's a fire in your office. I see a lot of smoke.
Um, Unlike your church building where you currently are employed, this is a essential oils diffuser and it's diffusing oils.
Mm,
So no need to call the fire department, no need to call the
okay.
police. Uh, as a part of my anxiety journey, I've heard that lavender and orange and some other things really help with some of that. So been doing that a while. And it's a cool little box, changes colors, brings me peace of mind. I don't know. I'm making stuff up at this point. But yeah, another great day. Great to be here with you and looking forward to talking about student ministry, which is kind of out of my wheelhouse.
Hey, well, but before we dive into there, like, are how invested are you into essential oils? Are you to the point of fandom where it's like it's doTERRA or it's Young Living and there's a battle, or is it just like, you know what? I don't care if it says lavender, I'm putting it in my machine. I don't care who it's from. It just says lavender. I'm doing it.
Um, I really don't have an opinion, to be honest with you. Like I just have uh bought some stuff offline and off of Amazon. I know that like my chiropractor, for example, his some of his admins, they're like Young Living. No, they're doTERRA,
Yeah.
however you say it. They're like it's almost like Avon or Mary Kay or something. They're
Oh yeah.
like representatives that sell that stuff like on the side. But no, I just buy, excuse me, just like a variety pack, and it usually has like lavender and lemongrass and sweet orange and peppermint and eucalyptus and tea tree oil and things like that. I mean, I do I think it's benefiting me? I don't know. I do, however, think it smells good, and I think they make my office smell clean. And um, the different blends are supposedly, lavender and orange, for example, is supposed to help with anxiety, and peppermint is supposed to help with headaches. Eucalyptus and tea tree oil are supposed to present with like, antibacterial properties and supposed to help with like allergies and cold season and flu season and things like that. So ever since last, you know, like fall, when all this anxiety stuff started flaring up in my life, I had literally tried everything under the kitchen sink to help with preventing anxiety and um, just trying to offer some sort of whether it's supplements, essential oils, medication therapy, all the you name it, I've tried it, my friend. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I think yeah, and I think that's also good too, because again, like I don't know, like my mom and my sister use it. My dad's kind of old school. He's very much like, oh, that stuff's just snake's oil. It doesn't do anything. Like very cryptic. And for me, it's like, hey, if people think it's helping you, whether it's real or placebo, I don't care. As long as you're doing good, I'm cool with that. And hit play. If I was to walk in your office and it started to smell real good, then I'd be all for it. I'd be like, oh, awesome, cool. Like, this is very welcoming. I am being welcomed with the beautiful scents that are coming from your office.
I get a lot of headaches, like whether it's allergies or migraine,
Hmm.
things like that. And I found a video on TikTok, and there was this woman who did this thing called what was called a peppermint bomb. And
Oh,
she
yeah.
took oil and she dabbed 5 drops of it in her hand, and she rubbed her hands together for like 30 seconds. And then you inhale the essential oils, and it literally opens everything up. It opens your sinuses, it opens your I tried it. And my head it helped my headache tremendously. But I've also done like peppermint and lavender and like Epsom salts and like soak my feet in like hot water. And apparently, that supposedly helps with headaches, which has helped mine. Like you make the water so hot that you can hardly put your feet in it. And apparently that helps with headaches too. When did we turn into a medical show?
I don't know. I don't know. I just asked a question and we
You
just
asked about the
started.
essential oils and we just went down this huge
We
rabbit
just
hole.
went down the trail. That's what essential oils does to you. It just takes you for a ride. Um, But before we dive in our topic is actually going to be talking about student ministry, and we're going to talk about how do you navigate the different participants in youth ministry. Maybe you are a student minister and you know you have some students who are very faithful. They come to church every Sunday, they come to your Sunday school, they come to your weekly youth activity. Meetings, and then they also come to your youth functions. They're basically the students that do everything that is anything that's youth. They do it. And then you may have some who maybe just come to youth events, maybe some just come to your weekly activities, and maybe there's some youth that just come to church, but they don't participate in youth ministry at all. So we're going to talk about that. How do you navigate the different students and where they kind of fall in this within the dynamics of the church? But before we dive into that topic, stories gone wild. Micah, do you have a story for us?
Yeah, kind of in the spirit of student ministry, I was thinking through I've never been a youth pastor per se, but I've helped with student ministry, whether it's being a youth leader or have led worship for student ministry over the years, or have been like a life group leader within student ministry. Um, but have never really held the title of student pastor or youth pastor. Um, but I was trying to think of a story that kind of involves students, over the years with my experience. And uh, one that I can think of in particular um, was that we were at the Ohio State Youth Convention back in 2012 or 2013. And I was in charge of a group of guys, and I think there were five of us in a room or something. And we stayed at a really nice hotel in the convention center that the thing was at in downtown Columbus. I can't remember the venue, but anyway, the last day of the conference, we they wanted to get a picture with me. So the five of them like lined up, and they all like held me up like vertically.
Yeah.
So like they were standing straight up, I was vertical. They were all holding me. They took a picture, and then after the picture was done, they dropped me. They were like, "The picture's done. Well, we'll just drop Micah because he doesn't need help down or anything. They just drop me, right?" So that wasn't really the bad part. The next like couple of days, my knee had been bothering me, and so like I had got up one point, and my knee like just went out of place. Like, and so
Ooh.
like I have to like you know I went to the emergency room, and I'm like, I'm getting an X-ray on this thing, and I'm like, what the heck is wrong with my knee? But then I went home that night, and I popped it back into place, and it was fine. I still from time to time will knock my knee out of place, and I have to put it back into place. It doesn't hurt to put it back into place, but it's just like I can't walk if it's out. And so thanks to those five students who dropped me on the concrete sidewalk in downtown Columbus in 2013, over 10 years ago. So that's my story's gone
Jeez.
wild. I was singing
Wow. I think yeah, and it's funny when you do the things with students because I mean there's been a lot of times where I've had to deal with students, especially in a camp setting where they do stuff and they think it's okay, and then sometimes it's just those little things like, oh, dropping somebody, does it like, oh, it's funny, but then at the same time, it's like, oh, you really they fractured, they fractured their hip or they dislocated their knees. So, it's always important to be safe when we're doing everything.
You
Or
know, you know,
it's
concrete may not be hard to teenagers. However, when you get into your 20s and 30s, that concrete is not as forgiving.
yeah. I mean, I can think about the times when my daughter would be like running around and then she'd trip and fall on concrete and scrape her knees. And she's like, and then she just gets up and she's fine again. I'm like, man, if I fell down and scraped my knee, I don't know if I would cry, but I'd definitely be like, ugh, and I'd just be in pain for like 5 days.
You'd be dumping peroxide all over your leg, and
Oh, geez. So my story's gone wild has nothing to do with students. It actually just happened probably right before we recorded this episode. Um, so I got done doing a podcast for CSRM and talking with a guy about sports nutrition and supplements and all that. So I'm like, okay, I have some time before we get on here. Let me go to the bathroom. Now, the bathroom in the church, very stereotypical bathroom, paper towel, sanitize, hand sanitizer right by the door. There's one urinal, one stall, and that's pretty much, and then a sink to and soap to wash your hands. And that's it. So I go in there, I go into the bathroom, and then I walk out and I look at the sink to go wash my hands, and I'm like, what the heck is this? And all I see is a plate with like these like probably like 10 like water cups, these big huge water cups, and a big gigantic bottle of blue mouthwash in the bathroom. And I'm thinking, what the heck is this? And I'm thinking, when would I ever need to put mouthwash in my mouth after I go to the bathroom to go out? So I wash my hands, I leave, I go to the secretary, I go, hey, do you happen to know why there's a big bottle of mouthwash in the bathroom? And she goes, no, I have no clue. And I'm like, okay, because it's a huge bottle, like it's taking up the entire counter space. So I'm not sure what the heck is going. But I don't know. I mean, the last time I saw like any type of mouthwash in a bathroom was when I was in Phoenix, Arizona for IYC 1996, and we had dinner at Planet Hollywood, and that was the first time I've ever went to a bathroom, and there was a guy in there in a tuxedo going, "Oh, would you like a fresh towel to wash your hands? Would you like some mouthwash? Would you like a mint?" Like I'm like, why is this butler like serving me in the bathroom? I just want to pee and go back out and eat my meal. Like, leave me alone, sir. But so
Well,
I don't know.
I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but like I noticed that Chick-fil-A has like mouthwash in their bathrooms now.
I did not notice that because it's been a
At least the ones
while since
here,
I.
at least the ones here do. And then also some of the Mexican restaurants in the community that I live in, they have mouthwash and stuff in their bathrooms. Like they have a little cup dispenser and a little mouthwash dispenser, and
That's weird. I've never seen that. I've
yeah.
never seen that before. Now I'm very curious. Is this like a new, is this like a new cultural shift in our society where it's like, man,
You have bad breath, use mouthwash.
but here's the thing. Like, I can understand Chipotle, Mexican restaurant. You're done eating your meal. You paid for your check. You're about to leave. Let's go to the bathroom. Swig a little mouthwash, kind of, so I don't have like bean burrito breath, and then I can go back to work and have my meetings and so on. I see that, but I don't understand why that would be in a church. I had drank coffee and now I'm going to go, or ooh, I forgot to like if it was me, if I'm preaching, I'm talking with people and I forgot to brush my teeth or I forgot to do mouthwash. It's like, here, let me go to my office, swig, 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 spit. Good. I'm ready to go. Or here, I'll put a peppermint in my mouth to kind of coat. But yeah, I don't know. And I guess if I figure out the mystery of why it's in there, then I will I will let you know on the next episode. So diving into our main topic, um, as a student minister, how do you navigate the various different teens that are in your youth group? And I'm especially, we're not talking about high school and middle schoolers, but we're talking about the participation levels of your students. You may have students who are there just for anytime the church does a fun event. If you're going to go snowboarding, that's the only time you see that student there in your ministry is they come to snowboarding, they come to mini golf, they come to all these various events, but they never come to your actual Sunday school or weekly programming. It's just simply fun stuff. But then you have students who do everything. So, as a youth leader, the question that we're kind of going to be discussing today is how do you navigate the various participants that come to your church, and how do you kind of help make some of those occasional participants become more invested in the student ministry at your church?
I think that like, you know, we've talked about this in other settings in other podcasts and
Yeah,
other episodes. Um, you know, the idea of how do we get folks to attend church, and there's been this cultural shift and this uh, shift into the church from when you and I were children to now. Everything used to revolve around the church's schedule, and now everything revolves around life schedule. And what I
yeah,
mean by whether you have one kid, two kid, three kids, four kids, and they play soccer and baseball and they travel and they do this and they do that, and like there's different seasons, and kind of like the church that we grew up in is definitely not the same as what we have today. And people, you know there's certain seasons of the year where things definitely take more precedence than the church schedule. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying that, like, in the fall, for example, once you get back into school, you get back into the school routine. School routine really doesn't affect church life as much as, oh, let's say, my kids in, high school or middle school, and they play football or they play JV football. There's going to be games on Fridays and Saturdays. And so maybe they're exhausted and they just don't come to church on Sunday. Um, Maybe my kid plays soccer and they're on a traveling soccer team. So we have to, like, let's say we live in Columbus where Scott's at, and we go to Bexley United Methodist Church, but our soccer team's traveling to Cleveland or to Dayton or Cincinnati or Toledo. We're not going to be able to get to church on Sunday because that's the day that, you know, our soccer games are scheduled. Now, if you have youth, for example, on Sunday nights, maybe you get back late and you're not coming because you're just too tired and you just can't make it. Um, there are also um, not just sports, but there are other things that kids are involved in. Like, we live in a society now where it's like, I don't feel like you're shunned if you're not overly active or overly involved in the community, but it's like it's kind of expected, whether you're in like FFA, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, um, what's the like American Heritage Girls,
hmm.
clubs, different clubs, 4-H, what's the agricultural thing?
Oh, I know there's
Ag
like Future Farmers of America, like FFA,
FFA. So, and then like when you get into high school and stuff, there's other things like Honors Club and the Honor Society, and
Young
especially,
Life, and
yeah,
FCA, and
especially in the latter years of high school, junior, senior year, you're looking at like um college visits, and especially when you get into the senior year of high school, you've got to go to banquets and you've got to go to all these ceremonies. You graduate, graduation parties. So like there's different seasons throughout the year that you're competing with as a church, whether it's sports in the fall, spring you get graduation and graduation party season, and then in summer you fight people on vacations, and then like there's your camp season. So like you're not at the church, but you're doing church life. So like you get uh, camp, you get things like um, camp, you get things like um, church God. We talk about church God a lot. We talk about IYC, which happens on a is like bi-yearly now. I think it's every other year. And then, by the time we hit late July, August, we dive right back into sports, band camp, XYZ. Um, that is a very long-winded explanation to answer your question of how do we get folks more involved. Do we change the way that we do schedules? Do we change the way that we
hmm.
do student ministry? Do we not just do it on a traditional Sunday? Do we do it another night of the week? Would we get more people that way? I really
Yeah.
don't know.
It. And I think that is kind of the big question because there's been times where, especially like when it came to youth ministry, before I came here to Bexley, like we do it for a day, and I occasionally will get some people. Occasionally there'd be some that I wouldn't get, but they come to Sunday's church, but they wouldn't come to our weekly activities or anything. And then there'd be a time where it's like, okay, let me do a survey. Let me try to do a different day, see what works. And a lot of times, like it's been very interesting because a lot of times, like there's been a it also depends on the student and what they're doing too. And I think that's kind of one of the big things you hit is that now a lot of students are heavily involved in everything
Well, it's not
from
just sports either, too.
yeah,
You know,
it's like sports. I mean, I have a lot of students here at Bexley who are involved in dance, and they dance pretty much every single day. They go and they rehearse for dates, especially if they have a big performance that they have to do. And again, it's not like theater. You have to know about placing and dance and technique and work. And sometimes you have like professionals coming in and doing that. And then you're also doing maybe crew stuff with lighting, costumes, everything else to kind of help with the show, especially if you're a small production company. Like I mean, I have students who literally they are gone at dance Monday through Sunday. Maybe Saturday's the only day that they don't have to do anything, Friday or Saturday. But then if they don't have to go to dance Friday, well, then they're going to football games. They're going to sporting events, school sporting events. Maybe that's when prom is or homecoming. So there is a lot of stuff, and it's very hard to navigate. And I think kind of the and I think kind of where I've kind of come to a place of peace at is, I'm not going to get every single student to come to a Sunday morning or a Sunday evening event. A lot of times and a lot of times it also depends on changes. Like when I had my sixth graders, when I first got here, they were at youth events every single week.
mhm.
Had a huge, great, big youth gathering of students. Then they became seventh graders, which made them eligible to do school sports. They try out, they get in school sports, and guess what? They're no longer participating in youth stuff because they're now on the school sports team and the schedule's changed. Now, I can try to switch the schedule and try to get them more involved, but at the same time, then I may be neglecting some other students who are more faithful to coming. And I think that's kind of the challenge as a student minister is when you're trying to get your youth involved, even if you switch to day or you switch to time or you do something, you may be neglecting some of your most devoted people who come every single day because it works. And now they're on a day that they can't come because they have their theater program or they have their band practice or whatever the case may be. Um, I think the other thing is when you think about students who come sparingly or they only come for any time when there's an event that's happening at the church. Um, I think sometimes the approach, a lot of times what youth ministers do to the approach with those students can really make or break the relationship that you build with not only those students, their families. Because I think, as our culture continues to evolve and change, we become more busier and busier by the day. It's very easy for old school pastors or maybe pastors who kind of they believe that church is the should be the number one priority in your life. So when you do have that student that comes to the tubing event, it's very tempting for a pastor to be very grateful that that kid's there, but then also maybe in some ways maybe make a comment like, "Man, it seems like you're only here when we do fun stuff. You should try coming to our regular schedule, our regular youth gatherings." Um, Whether you're saying it a joke or not, like that can kind of make people feel like, "Oh, well, I'm not welcome now because the only time I can come to thing is for events," or the events is kind of the baby steps for them to actually start coming to a regular church service. They're just trying to get to know the other teens and feel comfortable and build those relationships with both the you as a pastor and with cultural dynamics of the group. And when you go, oh, well, you only come to events, that kind of pushes people the opposite way. Um, and I think a lot of times and I think the attitude of youth pastors in regards to students that come sporadically, I don't know. And here's the thing, I don't know if it's coming from maybe they believe that that's the most important thing. And if they're not coming to church every Sunday, then they're not taking their faith seriously. So there kind of becomes like this. So for them, it becomes a source of evangelism for them.
Mm.
Or does it become a an issue of their own self-worth? Man, if I don't have all these students here, then that means I must not be doing a good job. Or if I can't get every single student here, then I'm going to be asked questions like, "Oh, how come you don't have how come you don't have like 20, 25 people going on mission trip this year? How come you only have 13?" And it's like, well, there's a lot of reasons. I know some of the people who do like to come on mission trip, they just can't that week because the way it is their family vacation, so they just can't go. And it's hard to be able to find a plan. It's hard to plan ahead a year in advance to try to plan something for an event and then realize, oh, now I have some core people who can't make it because that's also when their cousin's getting married or whatever. So, so I think I don't know, maybe it's both. Maybe there is this huge thing that, oh, we got to really evangelize these occasional students that come in, and also it's my self-worth. I don't want people criticizing or the fear of people criticizing my ministry because I can't get all these students to participate in our weekly youth activities.
Yeah, that's a lot. But I one thing I will say too, and I've noticed you doing it in Jordan, our friend Jordan, and it makes me think about the role of youth pastor. The role of youth pastor has changed significantly in 20, 30 years. And what I mean by that is that, yes, kids are involved in sports. Yes, kids are involved in band. Yes, kids are involved in dance and uh, honors club and everything else. Um, I know that, personally, friends of mine that have served in youth ministry, I know that you and Jordan both uh, do this as well, but like you're sometimes going to a student's basketball game or a student's baseball game or soccer game. Um, and, you know, it's not a big thing, but that student knowing that you're there supporting them is not necessarily an incentive. However, you're there and you're supporting them, and they know that you're there supporting them, and they know that you care and that you're taking the time to invest in them. Therefore,
Mm-hmm.
they may be more, you know, willing to come to youth on Sunday night or willing to come to, the outreach that we're going to clean this park in the community, or we're having a games night. Maybe they're going to come to that because you went to their baseball game, whatever.
Yeah.
It's just I think that 20 years ago we weren't doing that. We were just strictly having youth meetings and youth rallies and summer camps and things like that. But the role has changed, I think, significantly, um, to show that we need to go out and be a part of their lives as just as much as we want them to come and be a part of the church's life. And um, that's and again, I'll harp on this till the day I die and take my last breath on this earth. But we need to be a missional church that reaches beyond the four walls. And if you don't, you're going to die as a church, and that's not a statement of opinion. That's a statement of fact.
Yeah.
And how many churches are, you know, living their last breaths or breathing their last breaths because they don't have any students or young adults or young families because they've not changed course. They've not reinvented the wheel. They've not really pushed the envelope in respect to doing ministry in different ways that can affect the outcome of your church's ministry as a whole. Um,
Yeah, and I agree with you 100% because there's easy things you can do. Like even for like a youth gathering, you could just say, "Hey, instead of meeting at the church and having our devotional, we're going to go see Ellie play volleyball today, and we want to support Ellie." Or I mean, and even other things like the church here had a history of doing youth musicals. COVID kind of disbanded it. This year we kind of started it back up again just to see if anyone's interested. And one of our fifth graders who'd be moving up to sixth grade said, I'd be very interested in doing it. And the person who was in charge of the youth musical said, yeah, absolutely. And, we got her. She had a solo. She did very well. She kind of had the confidence of, I mean, she had a lot of stage fright. She was also in our Christmas play and she was like having a panic attack. I'm like, you will be fine. You have done all this work. You have done it perfectly every time when we have rehearsed your lines. You will do fine. It will be okay. To the point where, because of the confidence and the love and support she got from me and from Liz, from both the children's musical, the Christmas musical, and the youth musical, she was able to audition and get a part for the elementary musical at school and was able to do that, which she hasn't been able to do in years prior. So the fact that church has become a place to build self confidence for her, in addition to her growing in her faith, was life changing for her. And I think that's kind of where, you know, I think that's the thing that goes back to investing. If you are investing in people and you can invest in your students, then they are going to invest with you. If you make church into this exclusive club where, hey, you need to kind of affiliate and join us and kind of sacrifice everything to be part of us, and then you don't really encourage or confirm the activities that they're in,
yeah,
then it becomes one side. It becomes a one-sided relationship. And I think that's kind of the big thing because youth ministry is a relationship, not only with the kids, navigating the relationships between different personalities with the kids within your group, but as you as a leader, how are you connecting with them? And how are you doing stuff with them to build those relationships? Um, I would say probably the third challenge that I think pastors may face with the different various groups is you may have some parents who, for whatever reasons, may not want their kids to join youth group. And just recently, there's a influencer on TikTok who is kind of telling her story about how she won't be sending her kids to youth group. And just listening to this woman's story, she kind of talked a little bit about how when she was in youth, she was probably like maybe 14, 15 years old, but they got a new youth pastor, and he was a youth pastor who traveled around in the area, would go to different churches, but he kind of got a little handsy with the female students,
mm,
and kind of acted very inappropriately and grooming and all that stuff. So, there is a legitimate fear of, is my son or is my daughter going to be safe in youth ministry? And not only that, but maybe there is a parent who maybe had a bad experience in youth group when they were in youth group. And they're like, I don't want my child to go through that same experience. And I think the thing is those are also legitimate. And I think that's why, as churches, if you don't have any type of child protection policy system set up, and you don't have any literature that is out to the public to let people know, hey, all of our Sunday school teachers are background checked, they go through training, here's everything they do, then that's kind of the case. Then that can kind of help ease the fears of someone who may be like, oh, is my child safe? I think the other thing for the parent who may have dealt with some type of hidden trauma, The one thing that you as a pastor can do is, first of all, acknowledge their pain and even apologize for the stuff they went through. And then the one thing I would say is, a lot of times where I think youth pastors kind of make the mistake to go, well, I'm really sorry that all that stuff happened to you, but we're different. We have this policy in place. We're good. We're this, we're that. So your child's going to be safe. Where I would kind of take the next step forward is I would make the invitation. Hey, I understand that you're a little gun shy about sending your child to youth because of the experiences you've had in the past. What I am willing to do is if you would like to, I would like you to kind of be a part of our youth group as an adult. You could bring your kid, you could sit with there, you can just kind of sit in the back and watch everything. You can watch me, you can watch all the students, and then so then that way you have kind of a taste of how things are run, how the culture is. And then that way, at the end of the day, whenever you decide that it's okay for you to send your child and you don't have to come anymore, that's fine. And if you want to be sitting in my youth room by the time your student's a sixth grader all the way till they graduate high school, I'm okay with that too. And I think that goes back to, again, a topic we talk about in a lot of our past episodes is the idea of transparency. Can you create a culture where people can be transparent and people can feel safe? And I think for the parent who may struggle with their student being there based on their own trauma, or maybe you have a student who was in youth group at a previous church, had a bad experience, and maybe you're like, I don't know if I want my student to be part of this and go through the same ordeal. You as a parent can kind of be proactive and say, hey, is it okay if I come? And if the pastor says, yep, and even if the parent doesn't make the suggestion as a pastor, if you know that may be the case, then you take the first step and say, hey, I really think that I really appreciate you guys. I value you guys. How about you come to youth with your student and you can stay as long as you want. You can come as long as you want or as little as you want. But this way, I just want to make sure that you know exactly, or I'm going to be transparent that everything you see, everything you experience, everything you witness with your eyes and your ears is what kind of our weekly youth gatherings look like. And if you think that might be a good fit for your student, then we can have you. And if you eventually feel comfortable that you can drop your student off and leave them here with me and my team, then I'm all for that as well. So I think there's a lot of things where, as a youth pastor, you can do to kind of help navigate the various participation levels with your students, um, so that each student, regardless of their participation, can feel wanted or loved. And I think kind of the danger um, that you can deal with too is the fact that, you know, as a youth pastor, you have to kind of be very careful to not show partiality to certain students.
Hmm.
Whether you show partiality to your older students because they're more mature than your younger students, or I show more partiality to the students who come to youth stuff every single day because I hang out with them every single time we meet. Try to treat the students that come occasionally the same way you treat the students that come every single week. And that's really going to do a lot and thrive for your ministry and for the repertoire with your parents and everything else that you are doing in life and in ministry.
Couldn't say it any better.
Yep. Well, that is going to be it for us today. So, if you are a student minister and you're listening to this podcast and you find this helpful, let us know. If you're somebody who you're like, hey, here's some of the things that I'm doing that really kind of navigate the various participants that I deal with in my youth ministry, and you want to kind of give some advice or suggestions, feel free to leave a comment on our social media pages. You can send us an email at thescottstedman.com, and we'll definitely read those on the air. But other than that, that is it for us. So, friends, thank you so much for listening. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and we'll be back on next week with another episode. Take care. Thank you for listening to the Scott Stedman Podcast. The Scott Stedman Podcast is made possible by support from our listeners. We thank listeners like Patty and Scott, whose support goes to this podcast's continual growth and maintenance. If you want to support this podcast, you can do so in a number of ways. First, feel free to give us a 5-star rating if you enjoyed this episode and share it with your friends. If you'd like to financially support the Scott Stedman Podcast, you can go to the website ko-fi.com/the Scott Stedman Podcast. That website again is ko-fi.com/the Scott Stedman Podcast. Thank you so much for listening.